You're listening to Art Said Podcast, episode number 12, Advocating for the Arts, a conversation with Wendy Liscow. Welcome to the Art Said Podcast, conversations through the perspective of the arts in education, hosted by educators and artists Shauna Longo and Edric DeBost. All right. Good afternoon, Edric. How are we doing today?
I'm good.
Welcome to lunch, everybody, as we have talked about in a previous episode. Today, we are so excited to have our dear friend and colleague, Wendy Liscow, with us. Wendy is the executive director of the amazing organization Arts Ed New Jersey. If you don't know what that is, throw some goo at it right now, right? Go on to Google. But Wendy, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what is Arts Ed New Jersey and your role?
Well, thank you first for having me, Shauna and Edric. As you said, we are longtime collaborators and friends. I've grown to love your work and your wisdom. So thank you for having me. Yes, I am with Arts Ed New Jersey, and we really are focused on making sure that every child has a quality sequential arts education every day at every school every year. And we do this through advocacy, professional learning. And what I think makes us so unique is that we do this as a collective impact model because arts education for all is sounds like it's an easy thing to do, but it is not. And we need everybody at the table who has some stake in the game. And that means education associations, it means parents, it means students, it means school board members, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody knows what it takes to build this village. They are all at the table doing this work.
Absolutely. It's all about advocating, right? For what we need, for what's right, for what our kids need. So tell us about how that approach like is recognizing that arts education is a social justice issue. Edric, you had a question about this for Wendy, actually.
Right. So this is something I want to take apart if I could. The idea of so when you talk about arts education as a social justice issue, just if I could real quick, in terms of my experiences as an art teacher, I spent a lot of time talking to supervisors and other teachers, honestly, about the idea that art and music, the art is not just decoration, and the music is more than just entertainment. So that's a conversation I'm having with people in education. It was about a year ago, 2 years ago, Sean and I were listening to a podcast of a couple of gentlemen talking about STEAM, a couple of advocates for STEM, rather. STEM advocates, and they got around to talking about going from STEM to STEAM, and I'm paraphrasing badly, but they were basically saying, we just really need to make connections between STEM, between science, technology, and, engineering and math. We don't really need to draw pictures or, have some music, have the kids learn a song. So that was their understanding, these are STEM advocates. That was their
Sure.
understanding of what STEAM was or what the arts could contribute to, that level of education. So those are some things I'm running into just as an educator. But just to throw one more thing in that I'm also dealing with is the idea of creativity, right? So that creativity is not something you were born with, which is a lot of people, have this idea. It's only the people that have talent and they're born with. There is such a thing as talent, but there are also elements of, as you know, of what creativity is. It really have to do with a skill that you develop, right? That you work on. So by the time you get to this idea of social justice, arts being a part of social justice, so I'm wondering where does that phrase go? I mean, how do you scale that conversation about social justice to different audiences? Now, again, I'm speaking just as a teacher, but and again, if Arts Ed New Jersey is casting a very broad net to communities, other arts organizations, parents, so how do you kind of introduce that idea? Because social justice is a big idea. I'm with you, but I know it's hard to get people to a place where they can have that conversation. So I don't know if you can talk about how you do that.
Well, this is something we are going to be learning how we want to do it. But I'll tell you a little bit about, I guess, how we landed there.
Okay.
And that might explain it. And you sort of asked you hit on a couple things that I find really interesting. So I would love to touch on them. But I think in terms of social justice, as arts education is a right for every child. And It is, in my mind, a great equalizer. To deny a child from having an arts education often means you're denying them from understanding their own identity, giving them a sense of belonging in their school, in their communities, and to have an agency and voice. Those are huge social justice elements that I think by denying young people an arts education, you're denying them their footing in society in a way that any other subject is helping to do. But I actually happen to believe, and probably every single one of your listeners, so I may be preaching to the choir here,
That's
but
okay.
you know what? We are the silver bullet for so many intractable problems in our society and in children's lives. You make me think of something that I heard back in 2015 when Rachel Gosling was like the executive director of the President's Council on Humanities. And she sort of started talking about the arts are not just a flower, they are also a wrench or a tool. We are a flower that brings joy, creativity, um, all those things that make life so much richer, but it's also a tool. It's a tool um, for academic success, and especially right now when young people, I think, we're all reeling. Our teachers are also reeling from the pandemic and what is happening in our world. It gives us an opportunity to figure out how to empathize, to cope, all those things that I think we need right now. And that's why it's a social justice issue, and we have to fight for it.
Right. That reminds that's kind of how I think of advocacy. I think of advocacy as something that it's just taking an idea and making that idea available to a broad audience. But yeah, it has to be done all the time. And yeah, you have to find
And it
ways.
has to be personalized, don't you think? Everyone has to find their story
Right.
about the arts. And and I think we all have a story that's really positive about the arts. And I think there are a lot of people out there who might say, "Oh, I can't dance, I can't sing." I don't know about you, but I hate when I hear that.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I
Right?
had one of my best arts integration lessons come from a teacher that was like, why don't we do something about sound waves because I'm tone deaf, I can't sing, I couldn't sing in chorus in high school, and so now I don't like to teach sound waves." And I'm like, "Wait, what? Those 2 aren't even like, whether you can sing or not does not impact how you teach sound waves." But it's this personalization of feelings, right? And that connects us and sometimes skews the way we look at things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you trace that back to where that comes from, I mean, it all started in kindergarten, right? But I think we have to recognize those stories. And even if it's a negative story, like, how do we make sure that that doesn't happen to our children? You know, because
Absolutely.
every single one of them, this is why it's also a social justice issue, grows up to be an adult who is going to be making decisions for other children in our society. So start, you know,
Absolutely. I've always said that. Like, I'm a music educator, but I'm a music education advocate because every kid that comes through my classroom is my future advocate. And if we as arts educators can give them amazing experiences that they look fondly upon and great memories to take with them, we're creating that advocacy that we can tap into later, right? Where we're creating that connection with the arts and that love for the arts and appreciation that we can then leverage to continue to build.
Right. I often say that I'm not teaching art, I'm teaching process. Right. And so, but then there's two levels. I mean, there's the level of those who create, and there's also the level of those who appreciate. And those two things are what create. It's like the art is created for the audience. The audience also helps to develop the art by their participation in it. So that's kind of how I understand that.
So, another thing that Arts Ed New Jersey is amazing with is defining what quality arts education looks like from like scope and sequence of skills and needs, which really has evolved from the new revised standards, right? That took a big shift away from skills and specific knowledge and more to a process based look into each of our arts areas, as well as resources and space, and being meaningful and culture responsive and healing centered, trauma centered, and incorporating SEL. I mean, it's a lot that Arts Ed New Jersey does. So, talk to us a little bit about that, because that all plays a part in this advocacy piece.
Yeah, you have to know what you're asking for when you advocate, right? And listen, we're in a state that is very individualized. Each district has their own pathways, etc. Yet our job is to try to have a unified voice on what we are asking for. So the only way to do that is to really pull together our Always Ready Task Force, which is um, our new take on the task force that we pulled together during COVID of amazing discipline focused people from schools, from higher ed, et cetera, to bring the best ideas together to say, okay, what do we agree on in terms of dosage, space, resources? And we've had a model school program over the years, and it sort of identified this is the star, this is the 5 on the rubric. And this year, and into next, we're going to be looking at what do we want to put on this continuum and have a tool where schools can sort of say, okay, we all agree this is the ideal for space and number of minutes, skills, etc. But we may not be there, right?
Mhm.
And oh, we're advocating for 5 art forms. Well, some schools are really lucky to have the visual arts and music. What is the value add, and how do we move people along that continuum? How do we give them the advocacy skills to know what to ask for from their school boards, from the PTAs, from each other? And without knowing what to ask for, we can't ask. So that's where we're going to get agreement so we can have a platform.
Yeah, I was on that meeting, and
Mhm.
I was so excited to hear this coming back, because I think that a lot of people aren't sure where could we go or what else is happening out there. So to give them this gauge with which to assess their programs, right? To take inventory, to look at their community, to look at the values and kind of see where they can best make some strides to move things forward is amazing work that is much needed, I think, to help people with this process that may not be able to figure out, like, oh my gosh, where do I go? What is possible, and what does quality look like? Giving that as a like starting point for people, I think, is hugely important in advocating and moving us all forward to bigger and better things.
Yeah, I think there are basic questions sometimes that we don't ask ask that we need to. The 2 questions I keep coming back to me are, who's this for, and what do we really need? They're simple questions, but I think a lot of times because those things aren't clear, we don't know how to move forward.
Well, we have a new campaign with 3 concepts, 3 prongs. One is it's Arts Ed Now has been our long time campaign, and now we're adding and for all. And what we mean by all is all kids. Because right now it's really not all kids. You might be able to demonstrate on the page that you're serving all kids because they might have access, but they're not participating. And it
Mhm.
might mean we're hearing a lot that special ed kids, English language learners are not getting arts, juvenile justice kids, they're not getting their art. So we mean all. And the second is really all art forms. And getting back to what you're saying, Edric, the third is really about including all in this campaign. And that's the voice of young people. So when you say who should be at the table, so often we're so busy as adults fighting the good fight, sometimes we forget to bring in who we're trying to serve. So the saying nothing about me without me,
Mm.
we need to be listening more to young people, and I think adults listen to young people.
They do. I mean, I could tell you when, when I would do board presentations at Board of Education meetings, I would always have the kids do the presentation. Coach them, let them do it. They don't need to hear from me. I'll be there to support the kids. Let the Board of Ed hear from the kids what we did, what they did, and what that experience meant to them is so much more powerful from the students' mouths than it is from even the teachers. I think that's really important.
I totally agree.
All right, so talk a little bit because we're getting towards our wrapping it up. But tell us a little bit. I know Arts Ed New Jersey also has professional development offerings, and then we want to talk about like the importance of arts advocacy all the time because you and I are
Right.
big. We are all big proponents of that.
Yeah, as much as we want to, our goals and our mission is all about young people, but we work through the adults that are connecting to those young people. So, as we learn about what quality looks like, as we explore and learn about culturally responsive practice, as we learn about what the standards mean for teachers and educators in schools, and for supervisors, we are offering professional learning opportunities. And I just want to bring up two, if I could. We have quite a
Absolutely,
few. One is we have a new on demand online course for standards
that's
and
awesome.
how to apply these standards in creative ways. And, you know, um, it's unfortunate, but we were unable to really carve out time as educators to really dig into the new standards. And, in a year, we may be starting that process all over.
Hmm.
Um, but my guess is, even with that process, we're going to be using this is going to be the foundation for years to come. So this online course, you do it at your own pace. We're going to be kicking off another cohort, however, in January. You can find access to that on our website at artsednewjersey.org, and you'll see professional learning. And we also have kicking off January 15th, Martin Luther King Day, intentionally, our culturally responsive arts education workout and guided conversations. It's an 8-week experience. Asynchronously, you get to have an opportunity to learn at your own pace, but also with a cohort of probably up to 200 other people and a Google Classroom to reflect on what you're reading and learning. In the really what we have learned in culture responsive is that you have to start with yourself and understand
Absolutely.
your own identity and all this work, and it gives you such a supportive community to do it. So that's also at and artsednj.org/pray workout, and you can register for that. There's also an opportunity for 4 conversations. Oh my gosh, those Tuesday evening conversations or afternoon conversations are so powerful and meaningful. You get to talk with people who really are trying to think through all these things, but be in community. And if you want, I'll pivot over to
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
advocacy
Yeah,
all the time. We have learned that people care about the arts, but also sometimes don't know where to start. So with this new campaign, Arts Ed Now and for All, we have an opportunity for people to sign up as champions. We have this goal that there will be. We started with a champion in every county,
county.
so 21, and then we expand to every district, and then we want to see students and parents, like little teams. So at some point, when we hear some, arts are being cut or they're threatened, we can mobilize the community to advocate, not just for your own kid, but it's a community fight. So we encourage everybody to go to our artsednow.org website where you can sign up to be a champion. You could find all kinds of tools to figure out where do I start. But I think that if you're sensing that there's trouble in paradise, which I think we hear every day, there is a threat to some of the progress we
Absolutely.
made, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
There are some steps you can start taking, and you have to, and what we want you to do is be armed with information, like what is really happening in your school. And we have a dashboard, a data dashboard, where you can find out what's going on in your community, in your district, in your school. You can compare to other communities, but it's always a year behind.
Right.
We really say, check this data. Is this right? And then before you get all rallied up, like find if there's an art supervisor in the district who has a plan and who's working behind the scenes to make things happen and link arms with them. And we really also work with school boards. We all know that school boards are looking at budgets and they're holding the purse strings.
It's that time of the year.
It's that time
Right
of the
now.
year.
Right now.
So find your champion on the school board. Do you guys take performances to your school board meetings?
Yes. Yep. Yep. So, I'm actually here in Westfield having students perform at the December Board of Education meeting, and then again at this in the spring. And as a sitting Board of Ed member in the town I live in, that's one of the things I gave an idea. We always have a presentation at every board meeting to try to bring people in, and I said it'd be great if we had some students come perform in December. So you have
And
to ask.
yeah, you have to, and you have to show and those teach and let those students talk or their parents talk. We're also launching, we realize this is concert season, right? And there's always, March in the schools month, and we have end of, year concerts, and we are launching a new campaign that will be on our website tomorrow that is curtain speeches and ads you can put in. And I love this new curtain speech because it's about silence your phone and raise your voice.
Love it.
And so it's going to be a great campaign since you have all you music educators and visual arts, all arts educators have the ear of your people right now.
You do. And a lot of times people need help with how do I phrase this? What do I say? What's appropriate? And so by having a standard message available to them that they can utilize, I think is very powerful. And I think that what everybody needs to remember is like, yes, when times are difficult and things might be cut and things like, yeah, you got to get the army going, but this is something you need to do continually all the time. And social media has given us that opportunity to continually get the message out there and to showcase the great things that are happening in the arts within our schools. So don't be afraid to leverage that. You don't have to have massive proclamations. It could just be, hey, look at this piece of art that was created in kindergarten today. Something simple goes a really long way. And I think people forget about that. And sometimes they think too big. And if you do enough little tiny things along the way, it builds into something bigger that can help you down the road.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Edric, do you have anything else to wrap this up?
I'm good.
All right. Wendy, it was so lovely to talk with you today. We are definitely going to have to do this more because I feel like we just scratched the surface and we could have had a 3-hour podcast episode.
A lot to dig into, yes.
100% with you. So we would love to have you back another time. Thanks to our listeners, and we will see you all and hear you all in our next episode.